Hey guys, what's up? Sando here. And finally it's time to review the flagship armature-based IEMs from FiiO, which are called FA9. These are going for $499, so definitely not cheap by any means, but not extremely expensive either. I'm quite curious about these ones, so let's dive deep and let's unbox them first. And this is the product box. Let's see what's inside. Ta-da! Very nice design. This is a diamond cut, I think. And as I see, they put spin fit ear tips in these ones. What else we can see in the package? So you have 30 pairs of ear tips, spin fit memory foam voice ear tips. These are, I think these are balanced, yes, balanced, and these are bass ear tips. You have also a really nice leather case. I like this one very much. And inside you'll find another case, a zipper case. And in the zipper case you'll find the brush, which also has a flat screwdriver, which will help you change all those switches. And you have a magnetic cable organizer. As you can see, the cable quality is really nice, very sturdy. It's an 8 conductor cable, so 8 strands of silver-plated copper. This is metal, really nice quality. I like it a lot. Very strong MM6 connectors, so very sturdy. You can see the switches. So let's move on. As for the build quality, the FA9 shell is made out of high-end medical grade resin. It's manufactured by advanced 3D printers. The shell is filled completely with resin, so the internals will not bounce around, how I've seen on some custom monitors. I can't spot any air bubbles in the resin, so it looks really well made and well put together. The outer nozzle is having a diameter of about 5 mm, so it is the standard sized one, so you can easily use your ear tip collection. The MM6 connector is buried in the shell and doesn't stick out too much, how it was the case on their FH7. I like that you need to apply quite some force to attach and detach that cable, and I would personally like to see some custom faceplates maybe in the future that will be easily attached and detached from these IEMs. Just imagine separately purchasing lots of custom faceplates that would make your IEMs always fresh, personal and unique looking. Here's an amazing idea that I would like to see someday. In terms of technology, FA9 is having 6 armature drivers per side. Some of those are custom drivers manufactured by Knowles according to strict specs of the FiiO team. They added a subwoofer-like design at the end of those bass drivers. You can actually see that ultra-long sound tube with your own eyes, so it stretches for 18 mm, yes, for 8 freaking centimeters. That works as a huge low-pass filter, filtering out the mid-range and the treble excess and enhancing the bass performance and its sustain. FiiO implemented a 4-way crossover design for the first time in this one, meaning that even the ultra-high frequencies will be taken care of. By far, the coolest thing FiiO adopted in FA9 are those 3 tiny adjustment switches. I never saw anything like that in any IEM design, and I'm eager to try them all for myself and combine some of them too. The switches are working directly with the electronic crossover and allows a fine-tuning not only of the sound, but also of the sensitivity and impedance of the IEMs. That is pretty cool if you ask me. First switch will make you choose between 16 and 32 ohm impedance, resulting in a difference of about 3 decibels between them. By default, that switch is engaged, making FA9 easier to drive but much more prone to noise from the source. Secondary switch is the treble boost switch. By default, it is disabled, and if you'd like to have a crisper top end, simply turn on the treble boost for more treble presence. Third switch is the bass boost switch, and it works slightly different compared to the treble boost. When the switch is engaged, bass quantity will be tamed and considerably reducing the sub-bass performance. This is the default position. Disabling that switch, meaning the off position, will increase the sub-bass performance, and in my humble opinion, this should be the default position for a much better sub-bass performance. As for the sound performance, when I'm thinking about armature-based IEMs, I'm thinking about speed, I'm thinking about fast decays, about really nice detailed performance, about really nice positioning of all the notes in the 3D field, and not a lot about magical mid-range or naturalness or warmth. That should never happen with an all-armature driver. So I'm not sure what specs FiiO did send to Knowles to create those custom drivers, but besides all those traits that I mentioned before, FA9 also sounding incredibly natural, especially in the mid-range. So natural sounding and armature-based IEMs should never be in the same sentence, but here we are. FA9 will forever alter my preconceptions about armature-based IEMs. So a really nice mid-range presence, a really outlined mid-bass performance, and a super defined upper treble are basically the first words that are coming to mind when describing the FA9 performance. Coming from FH7 hybrid IEMs that I'm using for more than a year now, so these ones, FA9 stood out immediately by having a slightly different tonality. I felt immediately a higher degree of detail, so from my favorite tunes there was just a little bit more of everything. Especially the top end was considerably more detailed sounding, but mind you, not sharper, not brighter at all. There was simply a higher degree of detail. So roses are red and violets are blue compared to FH7. Yes and no. Yes, because there is still a higher degree of detail and also a faster pace too. However, the sub-bass took a small hit compared to FH7. I was toy tapping just a little bit more on the FH7 because that huge 30.6mm driver and that patented S-Turbo sound tube was simply increasing my mood levels somehow easier. Immediately I knew what I should do next to come as close as possible to the FH7 in terms of bass performance and maybe beat them at their own game. It's obvious that I'll be playing with those switches right now, and switch number 3 or bass boost switch will be first, which I'll try. By default it stays at the on position, meaning that FiiO is actually using some kind of power limiter to limit the power which goes to the bass drivers, and the off position actually disables that limiter. So in reality the bass switch in the off position is not working as a bass boost, but it simply lets the drivers do its job and without nothing standing in its way. Now imagine my reaction when I've heard sub-bass information down to 20 Hz and sub-bass went from missing in action to, oh, there you are. So the difference is considerably bigger to what I have expected, and simply sub-bass raised to the level of the mid-bass at the level of mid-range, offering simply a linear and an extended frequency response basically down to the lowest octaves. Personally, I would put this setting as the default position, as it is not hurting at all the mid-bass performance, the mid-range performance. It basically doesn't spill over those frequencies, and most importantly the speed and decay and basically all the details are not being affected at all by this switch. So FH7 is right now not as courageous anymore, because FA9 simply started pushing a lot more air in the bass, bass slam improved considerably, and toy taps came back in full force. Secondary switch, or the treble boost switch, is basically the only one that stays by default at the off position, and it actually works as an electronic treble enhancer. And in all honesty, I find the treble performance in the stock form mighty fine with the FA9. Basically one of the stronger points of the FA9 in the stock form. So on one hand it has less brightness compared to the FH7 in the most sensitive part of our hearing, from 5 to 8 kHz area. So you could listen to a wider range of music, a wider range of recordings, sources and amplification. And on the other hand, FA9 is simply super amazing when it comes to, super special when it comes to top octave, meaning past 15 kHz area, where it simply challenges the best IEMs that I have ever tried at any price. So FA9 is not boosting those frequencies at all. I've heard them quite linear, but very extended and really crystal clear in the default position. Lastly, the switch number 1, or the impedance switch, is an uber interesting gizmo that is more important than you might think. So it's not changing anything in the frequency response, so whatever setting you choose, it will change only the impedance and the sensitivity of this particular IEM, nothing more and nothing less. So by default it stays on the on position, meaning that the high sensitivity and that super low impedance of 16 ohms is engaged, making them the easiest headphones to drive that I have in my collection, and that is certainly so in my IEM collection. Now here is the coolest thing where the switch might come in handy. If you observed in all my headphone amp reviews, in all my DAC reviews, I'm talking about background noise, as it can negatively impact your listening pleasure. And when I was reviewing that HydraVox DAC, and headphone amp combo basically, I was very impressed by its performance, but I was saddened quite a bit by its slight hiss with very sensitive IEMs. So immediately I popped that switch down and I changed that impedance from 16 to 32 ohms. I connected them directly to the HydraVox, and there it was, a black void of simply nothing. So I immediately taken them out and I connected them to my desktop PC, I connected them to my laptop, to a smartphone, to a tablet. Holy f***, this actually works. So the hum and the hiss went completely away, or simply lowered its intensity to much lower, depending on how much noise was at the source. So this switch is simply a lifesaver. So there is a ton of great sounding portable digital audio players which are simply plagued by a noisy headphone output. Most of the desktop PCs, laptops, tablets, smartphones are also far from perfect with very sensitive IEMs. But with FA9 that is a non-issue anymore. So I want this switch in all my IEMs, and I hope that FiiO will not patent it, so more manufacturers will use it in their IEMs as well. FiiO, please put it in the upcoming FA9 IEM, we will thank you later. In terms of transient response, in the stock form, FA9 are impressive in terms of speed and fast decays, and that shouldn't be a surprise to anyone, as most of the well-designed, all armature-based IEMs are sounding this way. However, when it comes to punch, when it comes to slam, FA9 is not something to be impressed by. There is a decent amount of kick, but I simply wanted a little bit more oomph, a little bit more fire in my music, a little bit more body hits. So this is precisely why I strongly recommend putting the bass switch in the off position and unlocking that sub-bass performance to its fullest potential. Everything I wanted FA9 to be in its stock form is cured by a single switch, and I really don't understand why FiiO didn't disable that bass limiter in its stock form. And when you do that, you are not only improving the sub-bass performance, but also you increase the slam and the amount of air that will be hitting your eardrums. So being a transient response nut by definition, I simply don't see myself ever touching this switch ever again. So if you want a little bit more bass, harder punches, and simply a snappier, more engaging performance, then simply disable that bass limiter and raise those horns high. This immediate change is putting FA9 very close to the best hybrid IEMs that I ever tried. So it is by only half a notch less impactful compared to FH7. And that is okay by me, because FA9 is simply more than enough to impress an electronic and rock and metal music lover as myself. When it comes to Soundstage, I feel that FA9 knows how to put all those notes around the listener. So in terms of Soundstage, FA9 is really nice, and if you are searching for more air, for more depth information, then there is plenty of it in this one. So after listening to a few live recorded albums, I was easily hearing how the singer is a little bit closer to me. The main instruments will be on a second layer somehow behind the singer, and all the percussion work and drums somehow behind everything in a very believable and natural manner. So if you would like to have even a wider and a deeper soundstage than that, I recommend going balanced with whatever source and amplification you might have. So in my own experience from testing tens of digital sources, amplifiers, and so on, a true balanced design should provide a close to zero channel crosstalk. And when that happens with your headphones, there is simply a much bigger distance between your farther right sound in your right headphone to the farther left sound in your left headphone. And when that happens, you simply have a much bigger air bubble filled with sounds from which you can pick with your brain to whatever sound you want. The lower the crosstalk, the bigger the air bubble will be, and a wider soundstage will be experienced with your headphones. Yes, even tiny IEMs can sound big, spread out and deep in a balanced setup, and FA9 is sounding exactly like that. I also measured the performance using a mini DSP ear system. I used only IEM diffused field compensation files, which are working extremely well with IEMs, and of course a high-end desktop rig which should provide some accurate measurements. Here are some raw measurements in the stock form, and as you can see, it looks perfect in the mid-range and the mid-bass, and there is a serious roll-off in the sub-bass. But when I'm disabling the bass limiter, I'm getting this reading, and this is what I'm talking about. A much better performance top to bottom, with a very clear upgrade in the sub-bass region. Enabling the bass limiter back and enabling that treble boost, I'm getting this reading. As you can see, it affects only the treble area and it moves everything up by about 5 dB. Not a huge increase, but a very consistent one. If I am disabling the bass limiter and if I am enabling the treble boost, I am getting this funky image. This is the most fun setting, as both the bass and the treble are boosted for a very fun V-shaped experience. Please give it a try. And here are all the readings overlapped, and as you can see, the stock black one is the most boring sounding one. Very shortly I will show you their total harmonic distortion, which is very low, their extra fast spectral decay, their clean spectrogram, and waterfall reading. I also compared these ones with the FiiO FA7 and FH7, but since this video is already too long, please check out my detailed comparison that you can find below. It's one click away, and you will find that in the chapter 7. As for the conclusion, I really feel that FiiO wants to have two proper flagships in their portfolio. So FA9 will impress a lot of people that are into technicalities, that really love details in their music. So FA9 is almost dead neutral and really linear sounding, but just in case you want to raise your dopamine levels in the bloodstream, simply pop the treble switch and the bass switch and transform them into a very fun and engaging experience. That impedance switch is also a lifesaver that made all my audio sources very manageable and really less noisy. And FA9 also worked really well with all my desktop headphone amplifiers. So they will cost you $499, and it's an absolute pleasure to recommend them such a great sounding IEMs at a decent price. Okay guys, I hope you enjoyed my review. My full in-depth review is waiting on my website. It contains a lot more info. Just in case you want to support this channel, please subscribe to it, and thank you for doing that. And as usual, listen to more music, be positive, and I'll see you soon. Cheers guys, bye bye.